Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Not bad at all. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great. I wanted to share some things. I shared with you something this morning because I think it's worth going over a little bit
Absolutely.
and giving our thoughts and then sharing that out. And that is this latest report called the State of AI 2025.
And who put this one out? Remind me.
This is done by, if we go to the about here, let's see. Yeah, my screen's up now. Does it explain it here in this beginning?
Vercel. Okay. Oh, not
It's not the
okay.
one. Yeah, it's not the one from
And I don't
Vercel.
mean to look for that, but it's some of the time is who wrote it. Is there any
Yeah.
bias or anything like
No, I
that?
think that's a good, clearly, that was something
Okay,
we
so
actually
there are
talked
other
about
ones.
is
Okay.
there are several reports out there claiming state of whatever. It's a very
Right.
popular term. Datadog even has
Of
article.
course. Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Uh,
thinking. Is we've got them for a reason too.
yeah.
Not to be disingenuous, but a lot of these companies will put out reports just to vie for position or what have you.
But as far as who put this one out, ran by, there it is,
Okay. Ashok Misty. Okay.
from Misty, which I'm not familiar with Misty. So
I,
let's take a
I
look.
am because mostly because I'm on another podcast where the host is big on Misty AI. So I think the goal of Misty is to make using AI models easy, is their claim to fame, and they got a few tools about that.
Okay. It's always good to know where your survey data is coming from, just to understand who's sharing this type of stuff, what their motivations might be, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
But as
my
I did,
understanding is. Oh, sorry. My understanding is Misty is similar to LM Studio, basically, having not used it before.
okay, good to know. Good to know. We'll have to add it to the list of something of ones to play around with. But this showed up on the TLDR. If you're familiar with
I
the
do.
TLDR
Yeah.
newsletter, right?
Yes, I am. That is one of the things in my email mailbox that I've got to clean up. One of those newsletters that helps add to the 3.5 million.
Yeah, it like you. It's I read it also. It's really one of the few that I actually look at probably daily.
A lot better signal to noise, I think, than a lot of the others is where they come in for me.
Yeah, and they have different categories. There's an infosec one. There's a product one. There's an AI one. I think just a general tech one, a web dev one.
There you go.
So you can dial in if you just want certain subjects. I get them all and then just kind of look through them in the morning. But anyway, as I was looking through TLDR this morning, this report or this state of AI report, web dev AI, was in there, and I started looking through it, and I thought there were some interesting things in here, and that's why I shared it with you. And I thought let's just get on call and actually go through it. I like the layout over here first of all because I think it is always important to understand like who responded to this report.
Yes.
It looks like a little over 4,000 people, so not huge, but still pretty good size. Also, sorry, Ryan, you're only represented here by about
I think
three
that's proportional to be kind to this survey. I think the fact of the matter is that maybe the people using more Gen AI tooling may actually be in the US. And
Mm-hmm.
in fact, if this survey is in English and you're looking at a population of English speaking users using Gen AI, I did expect India to be a lot higher on this list, however, as a result, just in terms of the prevalence that I've seen of certain countries using more AI than others.
Yeah,
Interesting.
pretty close to the same. Anyway, that's kind of where these respondents are coming from. A little bit of a breakdown on age. Looks like the average age is around 33 age or so.
So we're probably if we're thinking out of college, maybe it takes you about 3 to 4 years to get a promotion, worst case scenario. So we're probably at about senior intermediate at that point.
Yeah. And then to add to that in terms of
Yep. Yeah.
experience, yeah, closing on 10 years of experience is the majority. The average is 21.5.
That's a lot of years.
That's up there with us.
Indeed.
And then what else we got? Company size. This is always important to get an idea because there's a huge difference in what's going on at the larger
Yes.
companies, like even Datadog versus a startup. So a lot of these, most of them look like they come from 100 plus,
Can we do a quick side quest here?
2,000. Sure.
What's that query builder at the top?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked. I have not gone down this rabbit
Oh,
hole.
we don't need to do this now, but this
Yeah.
is the kind of survey I like. This is
It is kind of cool.
fantastic. Here's our data. Have fun with it.
Yeah. Come up with your own thing
Fantastic.
and
Okay,
then
that's
create
really cool.
facets, kind of like Datadog.
I
Yeah.
like that.
It is kind of cool. But I didn't really want to, that felt like, yeah, I'm going to have
Of course, yeah.
all about time.
Go ham on that. The other one that I thought was interesting was a little bit further up. Higher education degree. I thought this might be interesting. Okay. Hey, this all kind of, this could be part of just a demographic as well. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Anyway, okay, so that's about some of the demographics.
They did a good job because they had things like versus yearly income as well. So they were actually comparing them to see how relevant it was, this is actually super refreshing. As somebody who looks at a lot of these reports, I didn't have a lot of high hopes, let's just say, but this is refreshing. And it's the way it's displaying all of the people who've responded. That's great.
It is broken down, in a nice way there. If we look at the model providers, this is where I started to realize that, okay, I'm working my way through most of the popular ones, like the pop culture AI.
Exactly. The top 10, the top 40.
Exactly. And ChatGPT for sure feels like number one. A lot of it's just because of it got to market first.
It feels like the Kleenex of models or what have you. Yeah.
Yep. And Claude's right there, number two. Claude to me is newer on the scene than Copilot in terms of just brand awareness, but has, in my mind, also jumped across many of them. And it makes sense here in this report in terms of awareness. People know about it and are using it here a lot more recently. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of their models that they put out are just so really good.
Now, the other thing I'm noticing here is that do we have access to those comments, or is it just that there's 17 comments on the top right of ChatGPT?
That's a great question. Let's go look.
This is really, I got to say, this website's pretty cool. Okay.
Now we have to do a deep dive on their website.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to see. Yeah, so it was first, which is what I thought, like first mover, for me at least, ChatGPT is what I used first, but it's worse than DeepSeek. And it depends what you're using it for, but I think from the code lens, this is exactly the kind of comment that I expect to see. The other thing I noticed is interesting is that this comment was in Danish, and there's another one down here in Japanese, which there's a multilingual report. This is fantastic.
Yeah,
because I feel like sometimes the comments might give you like the rest of the story or between the lines, what have you.
Definitely.
Anyway, I'm gonna have to spend some time with this. This is cool.
Yeah. So there's none on this list that I haven't kicked the tires with, which I think is, unless you I guess
I've not used Find or Find. I
haven't. I was just about to say until I get past Llama and into Mistral and Find. I'm guessing is what that is.
Yeah, I think I've used Mixtral, which is their eight expert model.
Yeah. And, another thing I love about this report too is like the links are just right here, so you just pop right in. Take a look and see what this is.
This is actually pretty good. Yeah, I feel like this is ignoring the conclusions already. I feel like this is how you want to present your results. Like, give me your data, give me a query engine, let me look at the comments, give me good demographics and why they matter. This is awesome.
I think I just planned out the rest of your afternoon for you.
It's going to be a busy day. This is phenomenal. Seriously.
Find.
Good job.
I'm not familiar with Find.
Oh, okay. So it looks to me like Perplexity, but I could be wrong. Like the find out engine.
Yeah. Just another searching type of tool. Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to a search engine. I feel like this is another category. If IDEs are one, then the other is like how to search properly now.
True. That is true. Well, let's look at some of the other models here. These I've got less experience with. There are more in here that I have not touched. I have not touched Grok.
I have an old Twitter account. I've used it like once or twice. Every time they say they got a new feature, I'll try it.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it's not been a priority for me.
As a Canadian, the politics are why I try to stay off X personally.
And then Gwen, I've known about Gwen for a long time.
Gwen, I think, or QN, depending on the person. Yeah.
And I still have not gone in here.
I've only used the coding. I think there's Quencoder, I believe is what I've used, but not this. I didn't even know it had a website.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Cursor, of course, we use a lot. And Copilot, a little bit of used. Now, Codium, I thought this kind of...
Codium got renamed.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wait, how old is this thing? Because, but then when you click on open it up, you'll see pretty quickly that it takes you to the Win server.
Yeah, I think there was a redirect there. I saw it just quickly, like the domain redirected as well.
Formerly, you can actually, as I hover over the tab here, WinSurf, formerly Codium, which we've talked about and played with Codium in a previous episode. So there's Quinn and Codium, and then we have
love seeing Ollama on there, like the offline open source. Yeah,
we haven't done an episode on Ollama, but each of us.
Oh, I should. Yeah, that'd be a big one.
Yeah. I've been using a tool which I intended to share at some point, N8N, And the version of N8 that I'm using is the community edition, which is actually the AI starter kit version because it
cool.
comes with Ollama already packaged into the Docker
Very cool.
container and everything. That way I can have a local model running.
Now, one thing of interest here is this other answers is 61%, and there's 231 comments.
Should we check that? Oh, can we get that?
Yeah, I don't think we can just because there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
But I
think we can look.
wonder, what's that +2 there? Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Oh, wow. Oh, some of these aren't programming, really.
So, I don't want to go too far into the comments. You never know what you're going to find.
Okay, moving on.
But I asked you before we got going here if
Right.
you're familiar with this V0.
I am. Yeah. So I put this head to head with Bold when I first started trying it out. And I guess I had opinions. Specifically, it seemed to be pretty tied to Vercel, and I guess I just don't know a lot about Vercel. So I get a little bit of a weird feeling because it's great if you're trying to deploy to Vercel, is what I found out right away. And then I think what I got a little bit weary of is that what if I don't want to host on Vercel kind of thing. I didn't really spend too long on it, and maybe I should have.
Okay.
But I'm sure Vercel is fine. I just
Fair
don't
enough.
know about it.
Yeah, 11 out of 376 people are using it.
I feel like that's significant, yeah.
It's more than Amazon Q. Or maybe it's
I'm surprised Amazon Q is really even on here, and I apologize for that. I'm sure there's some people using it at work, but just in terms of for coding stuff, I thought that was interesting.
There's just so many options out there. It's really hard to.
Yeah, they've got Nova, I think, as their big model.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Okay, this pain points I thought was interesting here. Which pain points have you encountered when using AI models? This is definitely something we, as just I guess people in Datadog in the monitoring and observability space, hear all the time around hallucination and inaccuracies is like number one on the list.
Yeah, this is great.
I wonder what the comments have to say.
That's a lot of comments. They're all similar.
Yeah. Hey, is this thing hallucinating? It's saying it's repeating things. And then context and memory limitation. That was another thing. I was like, that was number 2 on the list. But honestly, that's not that much of a problem
anymore. Yeah. So I do wonder if this sort of lines up with the Ollama users or something like that. But the DeepSeek users probably don't have this issue. The Claude users probably don't. Maybe ChatGPT for different older versions kind of thing, older models.
Yeah. And then the next one was poor generated code quality, which, again, I feel like, yeah, you can make the argument in certain circumstances on certain models, but lately they have gotten quite a bit better. But also, when you just look at the numbers, it's 12% of the respondents. So that's
the other thing I'm noticing is that, like, I'll think that the code quality for things like front end is phenomenal, but when I'm working on code that I know, let's say it's Python or Bash or even some Java, I'll be like, the code's okay, but it could be better kind of thing. So I'm not going to call it poor, call it like maybe fair to midly, I guess would be the maritime response, but like average, I guess. It's just not, especially if you've prompted and said, hey, write this code like a staff engineer or something like that, and it gives you back code that frankly doesn't work, would never work, or it's hallucinated some package. I guess that's where I get stuck. But when you're using like Sonnet 3.7 with Python or TypeScript, it feels like it's pretty good. Like I've yet to find a lot of errors with it. It's difficult, I guess, for me as somebody who only knows a few languages to trust like the Rust side of things, because if it compiles, I guess I'm happy.
Yeah. Skipping ahead here, the model providers, there's a section for IDEs and editors.
I am blown away that Zed is on this list at all.
I was going to say, you're the only one I've ever talked to about Zed. I've still not used it.
Yeah, I think I know it because I'm Canadian and Zed has a particular meaning to us, so I'll remember it. But this is not, like, I've never used it. I've only heard of it. I've never seen it. I find it interesting that it's in light mode, for example, on this website. Okay, there we go. And maybe it's just to grab your attention, but normally programming websites are dark.
It's to burn out your eyeballs.
Exactly. Yeah, turn off the lights.
So Zed's in there, which is I find, and then Windsurf is mentioned
as an editor. Yeah, I've not heard of Void either as an editor.
I'm not familiar with this one either. So it's an open source one.
Yeah, I see that. Open source cursor alternative. So that's what they're. All right.
Everything's powered by VS Code, FYI.
Pardon me?
I said everything's powered by VS Code.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, yeah, because they say they're a cursor competitor, so that makes sense.
But yeah, so
Very
another
cool.
one I've not heard of really.
Yeah, and Y Combinator backed, which is all
Yeah.
right.
Down here is some other ones that I was not familiar with.
Well, let's
Trey
see.
here coming in at 15%. What
I'm
other
so sorry.
IDAs are you
I've not heard
currently
of Trey
using? Yeah. What
at all.
rock have we been living under?
Wow.
This looks like a Windows only, maybe, or
It's
maybe
hard enough to
Mac
get a
OS.
dev to change IDs, let alone try 10 of these. This is amazing. I've not heard of Trey either.
Oh, there's more download options here. Okay,
Oh,
Trey. I would assume that's the pronunciation, but it looks like the others, Cursor and all them.
very interesting.
Anyway, I didn't mean for this to be like a tour through a bunch of tools that we
Yeah,
may
yeah,
have
for
heard
sure.
of.
I do find it interesting. Continue, I've heard of. I've heard of the Avante plugin. Aider, I've used. WebStorm is part of JetBrains ID. I mean, it's IntelliJ, but
Yeah,
come on, Bolt, we've heard of. What else we got under others? Okay, fair enough.
things that are cut off.
And some of these are freeform, which is why they'll fall under unmatched.
Mm-hmm. IDE pain points, or the pain points.
That
of the
second one's a
IDEs.
big one, yeah.
Intrusive or distracting suggestions.
Yeah, when you're typing along and I'm sure you've had this issue with IntelliSense, but it's like it's trying to complete something, but you know what you're writing.
Yes.
And it feels like you want a tab to actually put a tab in and it's completing it with some garbage and it might autocomplete like a whole paragraph. It's no, I legit wanted a tab here. Thank you.
It's such a bully sometimes.
It does feel like that. No, this is the way.
Aggressive. Well, yeah, it is intrusive and distracting. The monetary cost I noticed on the other one of the earlier ones is it was around 6%, one of the lower concerns.
Now, I wonder if when we're talking about the ID, they're talking about the subscription or the tokens or like the million, whatever you get. There's also like I think it was 60% was USA or North America. The cost of these may actually be quite a bit higher depending on the region you're in. As a Canadian, for example, with a not great exchange rate right now, a lot of these tools are priced in American and they do feel expensive. If I'm comparing like a Netflix subscription versus a Cursor, and Cursor's coming out more expensive than Netflix, the question is, am I getting more value out of this kind of thing as a personal developer? As opposed to somebody at work. And I did see there was a fair amount of, we'll call them single proprietor kind of businesses. So lone wolf kind of programmers, maybe doing a startup, that kind of thing, where this cost may actually be both personal and business. I think that sort of tracks for me.
Okay. Skipping ahead here to the coding assistants. Again, I kind of think because they were early to the market, first to the market really within the ID, as far as I'm aware, GitHub's Copilot was one of the first ones there. That one and JetBrains too, I think, were two early ones that I remember hearing about. But you've played with Tab 9. I've not done anything with Tab 9.
Yeah, I feel like Tab 9 and Codium were here first. So Tab 9 was a plugin for VS Code is how I first saw it. And it was also in IntelliJ IDEs. And Tab 9, the whole thing, like, it's tab. So tabbing is that was the main revelation. And then they introduced something that was almost, let's call it like agentic, but context aware kind of thing without chatting. So they were one of the first to start that and not do any chatting. And then they finally added chatting after. But I thought that workflow or that approach was novel at the time. And it feels like a lot of other people have followed suit.
Okay.
I've not tried Kodo. I've tried Supermaven, or at least tried to install the plugin. I'm not sure if I got further than that.
Yeah. And this Aider one keeps coming up to me. Do you like Aider?
Yes and no. Think of it as like an open source Claude code. So they look very similar when you're using them. And I think the ChatGPT CLI is similar to this as well. It's more of like an architectural tool is how I use it. But it's got different modes, which I find refreshing.
Okay. You're talking about the Codex CLI that just came out?
Codex, my apologies. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. What else we got in here? Other coding assistants. Codium, we've talked about is Windsurf. Klein. I can't say I'm familiar with Klein.
Klein I've been using a lot recently. It's impressive, actually.
On OpenRouter, which we have talked about, OpenRouter.
Yeah, it's not that they push OpenRouter, but they do say OpenRouter is kind of the easiest thing to use with Klein. And then in OpenRouter, what you do is you add your API keys and stuff like that, and you can keep going. The thing about Klein is it will continue until it gets an answer, which is good and bad. So continue until you get an answer with a bad model that's hosted. Like that could take a minute and it might cost you a lot of money. Doing it locally could spin up your GPU for hours and still not get anywhere. And then a lot of the times, if you just point at Sonnet 3.5, it'll get an answer in 5 tries, kind of thing, which is fine.
Okay.
RuCode I've heard of, but I've not used. Is it a fork of Klein? RuCline? Aussie Klein?
Previously, RuCline. Okay. Again, lots of new tools to go look into. Let's fast forward here a little bit because there was some other stuff we wanted to show off before we got done today. But let's see here. If we look into the code generation, because that's some of the stuff we've been playing with lately, that V0, which is the Vercel one, right? Bolt we've been playing with. Replit, you've got some experience with Replit. I have not touched that one yet.
I do, and I had to Google it because I thought that was Open Web UI, but I've not heard of Open UI.
Yeah, I had
which
the
I just pulled
exact
up.
same thought. I was like, wait, why is this in the list?
Yeah, I immediately thought this got to be a typo. This is cool. Yeah. So there's open source Bolt. I think it's called Bolt.diy, but this looks similar to that, which is, yeah, I got to try this.
Okay.
I'm really interested in the offline kind of approach as well.
Yeah.
If I'm on a plane, what do I do? I guess planes have Wi-Fi these days, but.
Okay. Other things. The usage thing, I was sharing this with somebody earlier because I don't think there's anything surprising.
Yeah. No,
Go
but I
ahead and say
love
what
that
you wanna
learning
say.
second place. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. When we like take a step back and think about this project that we're doing right now, that we're recording this session with or for, it's that learning and that research stuff. Like we need to stay on top of things. We need to learn these tools and be able to have authentic and genuine conversations with people. And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of part of that is just a byproduct of that effort. And then some of it's also intentional. Some of it is a byproduct. And then we're like, oh, let's actually be intentional about that. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff, but it all is in this list. Like we are playing around with learning and research is what we're doing. And a lot of that is in the shape of code generation to understand how code is being built. A lot of that also, but maybe a lot of people that watch the videos, the website is, it's just standard HTML and some JavaScript in there for a few little cute things, but it's a pretty standard website. And I'm definitely using a variety of different models and tools to help me build that. And so text generation is definitely a big part of that. We take our transcript of every one of these episodes and we do all kinds of stuff with that. And text generation is certainly a part of that. Summarization we're doing.
Yeah, I use that a lot. I feel like that's my quote unquote killer app for Gen AI. Summarization and finding novel ideas.
Summarization. I don't need to make the time to read something huge. If I know there's important things in there I need to know about, I'm going to sit down and take the time. But if I just need to like the TLDR, I can get the summary of it. And then we've talked about doing translations, some kind of localization feature for the site also, which I don't think would be too complicated. We just recently started doing image generation with some of the thumbnails on the website. I can't really see a use case for us for computer vision.
Oh, I beg to differ. I have so many.
On a website, right? Like
absolutely on a website. Yes, as someone who doesn't understand front end, take a screenshot of a site and like how accessible. Sorry, I've realized if you give an image to a model when you're doing that interactive, that V0 sort of thing, and you ask the model, "Hey, is this good design?" You'll get amazing answers back, actually. Using that sort of comparison to other things for design, I thought was phenomenal. Or things like how accessible is the site. I am hoping for the day where we can use video to do the same thing, to like rate interactions for things like drop-down menus and stuff like that. I'm actually super hype about this. Some of it is work stuff. So we've got like a product called Synthetics that I feel like is similar to this in a way where it's like, how's my website actually look on 30 devices? This is something where I feel like AI could actually compare and contrast what it looks like on Chrome, Safari, and Firefox on many different operating systems, which I had to do manually. So I'm super hype here. I've only so far, on the other hand, just used like a screenshot of what it designed, like how accessible is this? Are the colors good? Should there be more contrast? That kind of thing. So where you're putting in palettes, I noticed a lot of times, especially for the AI tools website, I would actually say generate a palette and then have it rate the palette, because I don't necessarily trust my vision. Because I only know so much about design. I know what I like, but a lot of times I won't know if like the colors are on or off, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, I'm super hyped.
All
Sorry.
right.
Little rant.
You convinced me. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't see a way necessarily immediately on how we're using it as a feature on the website for somebody to come in and do some computer vision. But you're right. I think we can actually probably find a lot of improvement opportunities for the website just by passing in some things.
Yeah, sometimes I feel even in bold where it shows the mobile versus the web version, I'll notice that there's issues just on clicking those two. And if I could automate, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do computer vision if we're not already doing it. Speak recognition, we actually are doing, to be honest, because we use tools out there. I think I started off a long time ago using Whisper from OpenAI.
Right.
We've experimented with lots of different transcription tools.
I was surprised not to see 11 Labs on this list as one that I've played around with just a little bit.
Yeah.
It felt like a superpower.
Yeah, being able to, I've said this 100 times, I feel like in the last week, the transcript opens up so many other interesting and helpful things that you can do across the board on content, from accessibility on up, like just a lot of great stuff. And it starts with that speech recognition. But Ryan, as you just recently saw going through a transcript of a recent episode, they're not zero shot 100%. And I can give them a pass on some things because we use terms that include acronyms and products that need to be capitalized, like Bolt, which usually would just say Bolt. This is a Bolt. You just can't expect it to be perfect. I guess not right now, but it gets you 97% of the way there.
It is so close. Even just using, so I was using Descript yesterday to do this, and the amount of time it took me was mostly me rambling, as I do when I get excited, was just fixing up my rambles. The rest of it, once in a while, it would have the number 2 as opposed to TOO, so also, or I said Drive as opposed to Google Drive. When I said Google Drive, it was fine. It would capitalize both, but if I just said Drive or My Drive, it would come in as something else, but otherwise it was dead on. I think Claude was another one where it might spell like CLOD as opposed to Claude, the person's name or what have you. But even then, Anthropic, it knew to capitalize and knew that it was a big word, that kind of stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they're getting better. It still struggles on IDE. See, you have to really say that E because it just wants it to be ID. But again, I can give it a pass on. I'm a single language speaking person, English, and it's not even that good at English. So I just can't really expect it to get it right. Okay, so anyway, I guess the realization I had is that we're checking off a lot of these things with our little project here. Code review, even a little bit, I would say. Text processing, I think.
Absolutely, search and information gathering. Like with that, it also feels like a super tool. I think it's 11 there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's so amazing. Even just to get sources for me to read on my own is fantastic.
Let's see. What are the main reasons that require you to refactor AI-generated code? First being poor readability.
Yep, my issue is number 3, actually.
Excessive repetition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or 4. or 6.
Imports, really?
Yeah. 3, 4, and 6 are the ones I see all the time, or faulty code.
6 being security issues. Okay.
I honestly haven't had a lot of readability issues in the code that I've been generating. Because if I can read it and learn it, and it's in a completely different language, I feel like it's pretty readable.
Yeah. I can't say that would be my number one. I'm not even sure variable renaming would be my second.
No, same here. It's yet to be an issue.
Maybe with you, but
I don't even know if I call that refactoring. Maybe if it's many variables, but
one question in here I thought was interesting is: have you tried running AI models locally on your machine? 46% said yes, which is higher, I think, than I expected. But I wonder if there's a lot of reasons why you'd run models locally, but it's not speed. Right. And I noticed in a lot of the other questions, like cost wasn't really a concern either. That kind of just leaves like maybe security or privacy.
Security,
like there's data
privacy.
That they have to run locally.
Yeah, and then there's just offline if you don't have access. Maybe you're the person who codes in a cabin in the woods or on the airplane or something like that. You just don't have internet access. That I can get. Like maybe I know some people who used to tour the U.S. in camper vans and codes as they went. Maybe they had satellite internet. Maybe they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one I thought was interesting is what are your top pain points when it comes to using AI tools? And number 1 was code quality. Again, I feel this just came out. It's April 29th. And maybe this is outdated already because things have gotten better. I used to have more complaints about code quality, but it is not my number 1 complaint anymore.
I still feel like it's language dependent. Like we've only hit the top 2 or 3 languages. It's going to take a minute. So if you get the Rust stalwarts out there, it's going to take a minute for Rust to get enough stuff in these models in order to write proper Rust. Because I do notice it struggles with Rust or Arduino code or things like that. Not necessarily writing the best code there.
You're absolutely right.
But also Arduino code is pretty bad. I love you, Arduino folks, but a lot of times they're beginners to programming anyway.
I don't know if it was in this report or somewhere else, but I did see that C# and C+, like those they're not great at that either. I guess this maybe just speaks back to the body of work it was trained on. There just isn't a lot of big corpus there. Here's another example of financial costs being one of the lower of the concerns, pain points anyways. And let's look at missing features. This one too interesting in terms of timing, because Gemini, was it Gemini that just put out the 10 million?
Was that Llama 4 maybe? I can't remember if it was Maverick.
You're right. All of them now are just putting out these massive context windows.
Yeah, and I feel like 1 and 2 are related because like monorepos, a lot of the models still struggle with. Llama 4 might not, but monorepos are, especially the multi-monorepo companies that might have a few big repos, that seems to be, it's going to be an issue.
Especially a large code base that's constantly changing.
Yeah.
The up-to-date knowledge. So anyway, you're right. Those two are tied together, but those problems I think are starting to fade in terms of the ability to index larger code bases. If you'd like it to, you probably can. And then the context windows now are just getting to the point where you shouldn't be sending that much stuff back and forth all the time. But if you're doing like one big dump to give it a big context seed, then it's pretty easy to do now.
I feel like facetiously last year, just sending Java stack trace would have been impossible. However, this year it's possible. So for me, like the context window is less important if you're just working on like a new project, and it seems to be a big deal if you're in there, like we'll call it brownfield kind of deployment. So you're trying to pull in existing code, and that can still be problematic.
Right. Yeah. All right. We'll look at one more here on this report before we move on. The last question, how happy are you with the current general state of AI tools for web development? And 40%, which is the highest number, were happy. And 36% being neutral, with 10% being unhappy, which I think
and I feel like for a dev, neutral is happy.
That's true. Yeah, indifference is our game.
Yeah.
But I would say also in my conversations, and I know there's bias in the small circle of people that I interact with on a regular occasion, but most people are definitely on the happier side with what they're learning and able to do. A lot of the concerns we've had have been addressed or are being currently addressed. We're all on the same team and know what's right and wrong. And I think we're taking I don't know what the right word is, a pragmatic approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's the right word. Absolutely.
And so I know it makes me happy to be able to like create and do some stuff that I couldn't previously do.
I feel like that very happy thing. I don't know if it's like the Marie Kondo kind of thing here, but for the people where you do something and it sparks joy, that's happened to me a couple times, and then I'll go down and keep using a tool. But it depends on the tool. If my first couple of interactions aren't good, I typically will bounce. There's just a prevalence of tooling and people trying to get your subscription dollars or maybe your hands in their code to help out on PRs on GitHub. But there's a lot going on, and I feel like my attention needs to be relegated to a few tools. And if it's not making me happy, then I'll be using something else. And I like that question as a result, because it does feel like this is an important time to pulse check, because it feels like we've either hit an inflection point or we're just about to hit another. But 3.5 on its own, Sonnet 3.5, sorry, from Anthropic, Claude, Sonnet 3.5, was an inflection point for me. And then 3.7 was yet another. It felt like a massive leap in terms of code quality. And it feels like there's another one around the corner, but those moments where you ask for a feature and it spits it out in seconds, and it's fully formed, and it's followed your rules, and it's got tests, and it's got comments, and the variables are good, and everything compiles, feels amazing. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to find that again. And in general, tools like I find Cursor, Windsurf, good to go, but it feels like a lot of these other tools are trying to get that same sort of goodwill, that same feeling.
Yeah, it's maybe an endorphin.
It's something like that. Yeah,
reaction that we're all having to being able to build a thing, to create so quickly. A big part of it.
I agreed.
Getting ideas to. It's kind of like the same thing. I had this thought the other day. I think the 3D printer has done a similar thing in real space. Is I can take an idea and I can have it in front of me. Like I can make the thing to solve a problem. And that again, I've said this in I think a previous recording, that just makes me feel very empowered to solve my own problems.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Same thing with, I mentioned Arduino and I think the Hackspace in another recording, but when people light up their first LED lights with an Arduino and they can do it based on something like if it's a tally light saying, hey, I'm recording right now, or maybe it's time for supper or something like that. Or maybe it's just, hey, your favorite team scored a touchdown or a goal or what have you, and it's behind your TV and it lights up. People are amazed by this real world implication of their code that they've written and authored for their specific case. Like that kind of bespoke code or citizen developer experience is also amazing for me to see. I love it, honestly. So I know a lot of people are saying like, hey, coding's no longer like, you don't need to be a senior coder or something like that. I'm not sure I agree. I feel like there's a lot of new coders coming into the market that we need to shepherd through the maturity steps that we've gone through, so that the scar tissue that we've built up around things like security and getting contributions and working with others and communications on your open source project, that stuff is now where we need to concentrate, which I think is good. It's a good thing.
I'm coming to this realization that I was not put here to write code. I was put here to create things. Code generation is just, it's like learning to write. And I learned how to write, and I can write on my own.
Right.
But there are computers that can write much faster than me and can do that in much better structure. And just, so now I use the computer to do most of my writing. And this is a similar thing for me. So yeah, anyway, couldn't agree more. And I feel things are just moving really quickly. But so things are like turning corners in terms of thresholds that we had on where we're like, you know what, it's not really doing much for me yet. Now it is on a few things. Before this video gets too long, there's something else that we wanted to talk about. Let me share my screen again.
Sure thing.
So obviously this is just one report that we looked at.
A good one, I will say in conclusion. Yeah.
Especially the design of the web, of the whole web interface. No surprise from a web dev, right? It's pretty awesome. But it's just one state of, and if you do a Google search, I think I did doing here, you'll see a lot of different state of AIs. There's this McKinsey one that comes up. There's this one from Vercel, the state of AI. There's the Stanford one, which you said you had heard some good things about.
I legitimately had ChatGPT help me out here and ask, are there any other reports? And that is the one that it pulled up as one that I should look at.
Yeah, and here's that McKinsey one. So the point is, you should probably go out there and look at a lot of stuff, right? And get your own opinions and learn.
Now this is, listen, I've worked with McKinsey before, but this is the kind of report that I thought we were going to be looking at today, which I dread, where you don't see the full picture, you can't play with the data. They're baked in conclusions I'm not a big fan of. It is nice. Again, it's a great PDF. They always have cool graphs, but it feels like being able to have access to that data is more important.
Yeah. McKinsey knows their audience.
Of course.
Certain types of visual aids that they prefer.
Absolutely.
I can't make heads or tails of this, but
it seems like sometimes they invent charts. Like they've got to have a whole cloth new chart for every report.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's hard sometimes to make heads or tails, like I just said here, of all of this stuff, nor do I have the time to absorb it all and think it all, I retained it all, and then can retrieve it all. Like, it's just not going to happen. We were talking earlier about tools, how we can summarize these things and get them into a format where we can actually make sense of all of it in a quicker way, more efficient way. And so I was like, maybe this is a good time to talk about, Google's Notebook LM. And it turns out you have not played with Google's Notebook LM yet.
I haven't, and here's another situation where I feel like dark mode makes this look completely different than the version I was using. It looks way better. Yeah, I think it defaults to light mode. This is awesome.
Okay. So for those of you not familiar, this is a tool from Google. It's really great for just dropping in a ton of resources. I think you can put up to 50, and maybe more now, but you could, at one point there's like a 50 limit, but you just put in PDFs and YouTube videos and links to Google Drive, and just give it a bunch of stuff, and it indexes all of that and synthesizes it, and then you can ask it to, give you answer questions about all the content. It's creating like this little mini RAG situation is what it feels like, or vector database experience, where you're just isolating your knowledge on these few resources and then just ask it anything you want about it. So I thought maybe we could just demonstrate taking a few of these links and dropping them in there and see what it does. So I'm going to take the link from that report that we just did, and we'll add it in here as a resource. And it's already got a little bit of a summary on what that is. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. And let me grab another link. Let's get the...
So I did the same thing, and I thought my summary was identical to yours, which is pretty smart. Maybe they're caching responses or something.
Yeah. Is this report worth getting? Or is this going to be a PDF that I need to download somewhere? I'll tell you what, just for the sake of a demo, I'm going to take this one because it is a PDF. Bring this back here. And I think you could drag PDFs in if you had it saved locally, but I want to say if it's on the web, you can also just do it this way. And let's see, is this other one also? Oh, yeah, the other one, I don't have the download of it, so I can't dump it in here, and it's not like an online version. But I wanted to share is Dora. For those of you who aren't familiar with Dora, it's the DevOps Research and Assessment Organization. They're part of Google now. And they put out a good report every year, the Dora report, but then they did this follow-up report about the impacts of generative
I hadn't seen this.
development. And I did help put together a webinar recently on this stuff, and it was pretty interesting.
I didn't know that. I knew you were doing a Dora webinar, but somehow I missed the fact that it was like the impact. That's really cool.
Yeah. It turns out from the report, the Dora report pointed out that generative AI is actually having a negative impact on software delivery, which is counter to what we all really thought.
Interesting. Yeah. So we're in the, what do you call it? Like that phase, basically, the adoption phase.
Yeah. A lot of the efficiencies and things that we are clearly gaining from using generative AI is really only at the team and individual level. But when you start looking at a higher, or maybe really more just the individual level, because once you get to the team and kind of higher, it's causing issues with the efficiency and the reliability and just causing more problems in general with the delivery process. So just an interesting observation from that report. And then, yeah, so long story short, there's some really good stuff in that report. You should go check it out. But in terms of just demoing this, I've got 2 resources in here, and now this is the source of truth for my little instance in here.
So it's like a mini RAG kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And if I go back, you can see like this is the one notebook I've got, and it's just got 2 sources, and I can continue adding more. I could try to discover. Looks like you can do some kind of discovery feature there. And then this is, if you've seen or heard the podcast thing that people share.
I have. Yes, I have. I think this is all I played with when I first kicked the tires. Yeah.
So I'm gonna let that cook for a minute while we talk about some other stuff, and maybe we can come back and listen to it. But what I like about this is, let's say I got a bunch of things I need to get updated up. I'll put them in here as resources and then just do this FAQ. And then it just spits out a bunch of really nice formatted notes for me to breeze through and learn to get me up to speed on whatever the resource is. So this has been a nice way for me to get really local, specific, not local in terms of on my machine, but localized and specific topics figured out, and figure out a way to synthesize that for myself. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it makes sense to me.
Cool. I really love this tool. Highly recommend it. I don't think we're going to wait around on the audio, but you should
for sure. I also noticed there's like a study guide in there and a timeline in case you're doing news and trying to figure out like where multiple sources get together. Yes. I'm loving these canned little things. I think I mentioned this in another recording, but I'm liking the fact that they've got like prompts that you click on them and it fills it in and it starts stuff. Like what next, I guess, is a lot of questions that you have. And I noticed in this, just playing on my own as you were renting there, rambling, is that as you put in the sources, those, I think they're called pills, but those little buttons that appear underneath actually change depending on the content. And then like in yours, it's actually the same as mine. I don't know if it's just caching, but I did get what questions are answered by this survey. And I clicked on it, I went through it, and then I clicked the next one. Who wrote it? Sorry, it's on the left screen there on the bottom. Okay. Gotcha. Where it says start typing. Yeah, those ones there. And you can scroll through. There's a few more. I think your questions are the same as mine, though, which I also find interesting. Yeah, it's literally the same as what I had. But these are good questions. These are good follow-up questions. If you're on a panel or something like that, you probably go to these next. They're rational questions. Yeah. I like this. Yeah. It's been a really great tool for doing some research. And like I said, just really centralizing, maybe not localizing is what I meant, but centralizing some ideas. And that podcast thing is really pretty fascinating, how well that works, how well that comes together. It's just two very distinct voices, and I think it's actually, my first thought was it'd be nice if you could use different voices. It doesn't have to be my voice, but like just a different voice.
But then I got to thinking maybe it's best if it's just these two because we can
Right.
identify this and
Right.
be like, I know exactly where that came from. And I think
Right.
that's probably actually the better approach.
My concern is the accent, and the accents are fine, but depending on where you live, that accent might rub you the
Mm.
wrong way. So if I were British, I would not want to hear those accents. I'm so
That's
sorry.
a good point.
As a Canadian, I'm used to hearing American English, but there are turns of phrases that are not the same in British English as they are to American English.
Mm.
And I can see that rubbing some folks the wrong way.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. I think with that, we could probably wrap it up and say goodbye. But
Yeah,
thanks, Ryan, for hopping on with me and walking through that report. There were some
absolutely.
interesting things in there that were worthwhile to share.
That's
So,
the best report I've ever seen. I think hands down, and I've looked at a lot of them.
yeah,
I've been
we
forced
have
to
seen a
read
lot.
like the McKinsey, the Forresters, the IDCs throughout the years. That was good.
Yeah, well done. All right. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.